Hi everyone. So today we're going to add some more functionality to this workflow by adding the ability to bring in more than one file. So last time in my previous video, we walked through how to making this macro that will basically read in an Excel file, um, add the list of sheet names to that Excel file, and then pull in all the data from each sheet, regardless of the layout of those specific sheets. So if you're interested in knowing what this workflow does and how to create this macro, please watch my last video. So today what we're going to do is add some more functionality so that if we had more than one Excel file with different sheets that we want to read in, we'll be able to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to bring in a directory input tool onto our canvas. And here we're just going to link this to our file path to where our files are. So here I just have a list of sheet names macro with multiple files in it. We're going to go ahead and save that there. We're going to go ahead and hit run, and I'll show you what comes out of this directory input. And a lot of times this tool is also helpful just to get information regarding files that might be in a directory. So what this will give me is a list of all the files that are in my directory. It'll give me the full file path, the file name, when it was created, when it was last accessed, the size of the file as well. So there's some useful information here that you could get from this directory input tool. So today we're just really going to focus on this full path data column here. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate all the other data columns here by bringing a select tool onto my canvas and then just deselecting everything but the full path. And I'm going to go ahead and run this so we have our file path isolated. Okay. So now that we have just our file path, here, if you recall from our last video, when we brought the data in, we brought in the list of sheet names. And this is what that looks like from the data input configuration tool here. So what we want to do is we want to append this text to the end of our file name, very similar like we did with this formula tool up above, where we replaced list of sheet names with the actual sheet name. So now that we have our full path here, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on a formula tool, and then we're going to append a list of sheet names right at the end of this full path here. So go ahead and drag your formula tool on your canvas. The column we're going to update is full path. And here we want the full path text. And then we're going to add to that. So we're going to use the plus button. And then in quotes, we're going to do the less than, and then list of sheet names. And then we're going to do the greater than and then close quote. One more thing to add here is we'll also need the 3 pikes in front of list of sheet names. So now that that's added to our workflow, I'm going to go ahead and run so we could see that formula and the results that we get. So now after we ran that formula tool, you'll see in our results panel that we do have the list of sheet names, and it's all appended here. So now what we're going to do is actually write the macro to pull in the list of sheet names for all these various files. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new workspace, new canvas. We do that just by clicking the plus sign. And then this will take us to a new canvas where we can actually start to write the macro. Okay, so because we're going to be writing a macro, we're going to go over to our interface tool panel. And very similar to what we did last time, we're going to start with the control parameter. So we're going to pass our full path through this control parameter here. So I'm going to change that to full path so I know what I need to input there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop an action tool, and this is going to update my data input tool that I'm going to put down here. So here, the way we want to configure this is we want to connect to a file. And these are all Excel files. And it doesn't matter which one we connect to, you can pick either one. And instead of selecting a specific sheet, we want to import list of sheet names only. I'm going to hit OK. We're also going to make sure that the output file name is the full path. And now that we have this configured, we can come back to our actions tool and we want to update the value of that file. And now that that's configured, we could then just add a macro output to the end of this. So this way, all the list of sheet names that we created from the previous tab over here, all of these are going to get fed in through that control parameter. And then the action tool will update the data input tool here to change the actual file name. And then we're going to output that. So here we could save this. And I'm going to call this multi-file list of sheet name import. And then we could go ahead and close this particular sheet. And then we're going to bring that macro right at the end of this formula tool. So go ahead, we're going to hit insert. So if you're not quite sure how to do that, you right click on the canvas, scroll down to insert, scroll down to macro, and we should get our macro there. And we have full path. Okay, one thing I want to go back and do on my directory here is you'll also notice that there's a file specification. So because we're working with Excel files, I just want to make sure that it's only reading in Excel files. So if you do have a directory that has different types of files in it, and you go to run this and you don't specify what file type you want to run it on, this will throw an error. So here, it's already pre-populated with an asterisk, which is a wildcard, a dot, and then another asterisk, which is basically telling it any file that contains a dot in the text of that file, which would be right before the file extension. So here, I just want to add XLSX, as that's the file extension for Excel. I'm going to go ahead and run this and see what we get. Okay, so here, this produced the result that we were pretty much expecting. So what I did was I just kind of recreated the file from up above just a couple different times. So they should all have tabs A, B, and C. These are the different copies you could see, copy 7, copy 10, all that information there. So this is what we're able to add now to this. So basically what we could do is take these two sections of this workflow, copy and paste them down here, and then what we'll get is instead of being able to just do this on one file, it will do this on all the files that we created here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll just left click and highlight over the two tools that I want to copy. I'll right click and hit copy, come down to the area of my canvas where I want to paste it, do a right click and hit paste, and just make this data connection here. So now when I go to run this, what this will do is read in the directory, add in the list of sheet names. It will run through all the sheet names. Looks like that ran successfully. And now what I have is all of my address information across all my various fields, including the name, address, date, and zip. So that was a fairly easy macro to create. And again, this went through about 10 or 11 different files, and then it aggregated the data. Even though the data was not necessarily in the same location within each sheet, by using these two macros we created, we were able to stack the data based upon column name versus the actual location. I recommend you watch my previous video on how we set this portion of the workflow up first, and then this video obviously second, to add just some more additional functionality to it. One thing that I also want to call out as well is you could always add filtering functionality into this workflow as well. So as an example, if we only wanted the Excel sheets that were either A or B or C, within the macro you could always add a filter to filter out the specific tabs you want. So if there's a similar name tab that you just want to pull from and you don't necessarily want to do the entire thing, you could certainly add a filter to just filter for tabs that had just A, for example. So this doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing kind of data aggregation. You could also write logic within your workflow to parse out specifically what you want. So hopefully everyone found this video informative. And again, between this video and the previous video I posted, this will show you kind of functionality about how you could aggregate data that are in different forms, may not be aligned properly, and are across different files. So hopefully everyone finds this useful.